Well, I want to touch on just one of the areas that Wayne had already talked about. By the way, all of these PowerPoints are going to be on a website. Is that correct? The DEQ website? Okay, in like a PDF format, I guess. Okay, in a couple of weeks, I suppose. I'm getting information from Carrie. Okay, so what I have are some kind of technical slide, a lot of detailed information. I'm not going to go into a lot of this. Wayne covered most of this. He talked about the new EPA rulemaking. What I wanted to touch on was really my perception and what I think is going on behind the scenes at EPA. Why? You know, Wayne touched on the what EPA is doing and what they're trying to do. So I've got some of that you can refer to in these PowerPoints. But it's really interesting to me as to why there is this kind of thinking out there. The NRC that he referred to as the National Research Council, that was a National Academy of Sciences program. NRC is a part of the National Academy of Sciences. EPA asked them to evaluate their program back in the mid-2000s, almost 10 years ago. In 2008, they released a major study of the entire nationwide program for EPA. How is their program working? Is it working, and how can it be improved? And so I'm going to give you a couple of quotes from that because, in my opinion, what has come out of that NRC study is driving a lot of what we see in these drafts of EPA regulations, these concepts, websites, seminars, webinars, guidance, draft review documents of proposed regulations, memorandums of understanding. Geez, it's all over the place, but it's all kind of buried and floating out there. It's what we used to call trial balloons that things pop out. So in Oklahoma, again, we've got 3 general permits, 2 of them, the one for industrial activities, OKR05, and construction, OKR10, are finalized and off and running within the past year. OKR04, the MS4 permit, continues to, I guess, struggle at DEQ to get finalized. Wayne is anxious. I know a lot of the DEQ staff are anxious, and a lot of the cities, the permittees out there are anxious to get OKR04 out the chute. And from what I understand, it's gone active again. So we're hoping to get a draft maybe in December, maybe next month, or certainly in the very first part of 2013. And hopefully a finalized version of OKR04 by early to mid of next year. So that would mean that notices of intent and applications and all that will 90 days later. So you're looking at late 2013, not quite a year from now to possibly a year from now. Those would be due at DEQ, and authorizations to discharge under the new permit by the end of the year. I think that's a reasonable time frame. All of it hinges upon when OKR04 gets finalized. So that's the latest and greatest information about OKR04 that I've been able to get from DEQ. So, the NRC, these are several quotes from their press release in 2008, but I thought this was very insightful because I continue to see these concepts. This is the study that was a stinging rebuke, if you will, of EPA's program. And these concepts in their press release just seem to have the same flavor of all these things that are processing at EPA right now. The current regulatory framework has suffered poor accountability and uncertainty. It's not likely to, their current approach is not likely to produce an accurate picture of water quality improvement, nor is it likely to control stormwater's contribution to impaired water quality. EPA should adopt a watershed-based permitting system. They really were emphasizing this even in their press release. Watershed-based permits should be centralized with the lead municipality. They're saying things like this in their press release. It's amazing. Bring construction and industrial sites under the jurisdiction of local municipalities. And it's kind of being done in a way because part of these, as you know, these programs are to have local enforcement, local ordinances to control pollution at construction sites and, Do we have to leave? Is that the deal? Focus less on chemical pollutants and more on increased volume of water. Boy, this is a big one, and Wayne was talking about this, and I'm going to finish these few slides up on this. And corollary to that, permit programs could be predicated on changes in impervious cover. EPA is really moving towards low impact development, post-construction, attenuation of flow from construction sites, new development and redevelopment. There's another one. The volume of discharges is generally not regulated at all by EPA, and the cumulative contributions of multiple sources and pollutants are not considered. It's kind of what they call a synergistic effect, that maybe one or two pollutants individually may not be a problem, but what are they like combined? Is it a double whammy on organisms and the health and beneficial use attainment and so forth? Conserving natural areas, reducing hard surfaces, retrofitting. Wayne talked about retrofitting. This is another big component of this whole LID, controlling flow, controlling the volume of water. These are some of their concepts that have been floated around the past couple of years. And Wayne, again, also referred to these: more permittees, larger areas of needing permits. For example, all of you know that one of the reasons that most of you are here is because you have urbanized area. That's defined by the U.S. Bureau of Census. And in fact, the 2010 U.S. Bureau of Census definition of urbanized area is going to bring in a few more permittees in Oklahoma. One of the things that EPA is considering is urban clusters. Now, if you're not familiar with these terms, there are technical definitions of urbanized area. Urban cluster is a larger area. Kind of think of it as a pie, and you're looking at the urbanized area as the meaty good part of the pie with, you know, the fruit filling and all of that. But it doesn't include the crust. There's no who eats the crust on a pie, you know, but an urban cluster would be the meaty part of the pie plus the crust plus the pie pan and all of that. So it's just a bigger area by definition. Well, they're talking about using concepts like that. They're talking about looking at, okay, if a watershed is impaired, let's permit everybody in the watershed. Let's not worry about size or whether they have urbanized area or density of population. Let's say every city, town, burg, whatever that's in that watershed needs to have a permit because they're all making a contribution, including county territories. So they're thinking along those lines, you know, how to expand this program greatly. And as Wayne was alluding to, good Lord, we don't have enough resources right now for the permittees that we have that were captured in the first round of the phase 2 with these concepts. And now they're talking about, can you imagine a city or a town of, say, 500 population trying to run one of these programs? I mean, we're already looking at some cities that are only a couple of thousand size that are trying to run a program or may soon be faced with this. That's tough. That's tough for them to do. As Wayne was talking about, the future rules probably won't have a distinction between phase 1 and phase 2 requirements. If you've delved into the deep end of these rules over the years, like I have, you know that there's very distinct differences between the original phase 1 requirements and phase 2. Phase 2 is kind of like phase 1 light in some respects, particularly on monitoring and inspection and that sort of thing. But no more. The new rules will just be stormwater rules. Retrofitting, again, is a big thing, and you need to worry about this. You need to pay close attention to this. Retrofitting means taking an existing thing, an existing infrastructure, an existing situation in your community and changing it somehow. So that's an important concept. That's not just new development. That's taking something that's existing and modifying it in some way. Special stormwater provisions to protect sensitive areas. That's always going to be with us. 303D streams and sensitive water supplies, areas and all that. Concepts to reducing the flow volume. I've been trying to remember where I got this from. It was from an EPA webinar or a brochure or something, but I thought these bullet points were really interesting, and unfortunately I didn't do the citation, so I can't find them, but they're really good, because this is what I understand some of EPA's technical ways that you can do this retrofitting and this new development and redevelopment. Removing impervious cover. That means an existing structure already has impervious cover, parking lots, rooftops, whatever, taking it out. That's an option you might consider. Maybe you'll have to. Depends on how the rules are written. Disconnecting impervious cover. So you put some kind of a barrier between two areas of impervious cover. So a buffer strip, a bioswale, something like that. Increasing the use of porous surfaces. Increasing the use of porous surfaces, so that would be pervious cover. And attenuating impervious cover using flow-based LID. So taking, again, an existing system and building into it. What does it flow to? Can I put something in a sedimentation basin or pocket wetlands or something like that? A lot of you might have seen, for example, pick on Walmart a little bit, but actually brag about them. Walmart's been doing a lot of work lately about building buffers and wetlands and absorbent areas around their stores, and they're getting a lot of credibility about this, and good for them. They're doing a great job with this. I say I actually stumbled across this in Coweta. Is Coweta here? Coweta? Okay. We were helping them with prepare for an audit, and we were doing some of the dry weather fill screens and helping them with that. I went over to the parking lot at Walmart, and I thought, pocket wetlands, absorbent areas, bioswales. They even had a big giant tank on one end of the parking lot that was a roof drain, a collection system. It was, and who knew? They didn't brag to anybody about it. It was just there. So you might look around in your communities and you'll stumble across some of these things. You'll stumble across some of these little wetland areas and brag about them, take pictures of them and show DEQ when you get an audit, you know. Did they actually take you out to that? I asked them to do that. Oh, rats. Well, I told them to do that. Okay, so anyway, that was a wonderful set of BMPs to control runoff. Okay, part of the initiation of all of this, after the NRCS released their report, and EPA wanted to find out, okay, what do we have out there? So they did this information collection rule a couple of years ago, and it was a kind of a scientific polling survey, mandatory. If you were selected, it was randomized, but if you were selected as a stormwater permittee, you filled out a bunch of paperwork and forms and questionnaires. And the results of that came back, and I'll give you a couple of little insights. And many EPA rule ideas are already employed, okay? And where I get this from is it's their website about the results of their information collection rule that they did, their scientific survey. So this is what EPA is saying about this. So it encourages us to create national standards. So they're finding out that some of the ideas that we're coming up with on LID and all this, gee, a lot of people are already doing it, so we must be on the right track. So they're encouraged. 18 states have numeric retention standards already. That means they're requiring some certain volume of rainfall to be retained on site. 18 states are already doing it. That blew me away. I had no idea. I knew some regions, EPA regions, were sending information like MOUs down to their water quality divisions in the different states saying you need to start doing these things. I didn't know 18 states had this. This is from their website. 8 states apply MS4 rules statewide, not just to the definitions that are in the Phase 1 or Phase 2 rules. They're doing all cities, I guess. I don't know. I don't know the details of that one. Most MS4s do not have the authority to maintain, but they do have the authority to inspect and require. Now, these would be private systems. And as most of you know, homeowners associations now own most of the detention basins and stormwater structures in your community. So that is becoming a nationwide problem and concern on how to get these. I mean, I get calls a lot from homeowners saying, well, when's the city going to come out and clean the sediment out of our detention basin in our neighborhood? It's a mess. And so I look it up and I say, I got bad news for you. You own that. How can we own it? And I said, I'm sorry, but you have a homeowners association. You own the property. It's your responsibility. The city cannot get on that property. And it's against the law for the city to do that kind of work and expend public funds on private property. And it's a big shock to them. It's a nationwide issue right now. Many states have undertaken LID and green infrastructure, but they're finding barriers in local codes, like prohibiting standing water to control mosquitoes, or some kind of minimum parking lot sizes. In other words, for public safety, and a store can't have 10 parking spaces, they have to have 20, and that type of thing. So you have to have larger impervious surfaces, minimum street widths, and that sort of thing. I think this is the last one. Yes, okay. I pulled this from an EPA PowerPoint done in 2010, a couple of years ago. And this, you might have told you 18 states are doing something. Well, here's 7 or 8 of them. It gives you an idea of what some of these are looking like. Vermont, I won't go into all of these, but it gives you some idea. Vermont, for 1 acre and more of disturbance, they're capturing 90% of the annual storm events. New Hampshire, 1 acre or 100,000 square feet outside of the MS4. You have to infiltrate and evapotranspire and capture the first 1 inch, and you get the idea. The goal of these new requirements, this new thinking, and apparently what's already being implemented around the country in many states, is to look at how what they call pre-development conditions, that is what the flow conditions are like just before you start developing, and after development, the result that post-construction flow cannot be worse than it is pre-development. So you have to preserve the pre-development. That doesn't mean you have to go back to when there were no humans on the face of the earth. You know, it doesn't have to be that. That's not pre-development, but what they're saying is before you start putting your structure in, you have to maintain the flow from that site. Okay, that's what I've got on the new rules. The last, I guess, point on that is it was interesting that we had the election for president yesterday, because up until then, we've all been speculating on, well, gee, if the Republicans take back the White House and all this, the EPA is going to fold and collapse in on itself and implode, and there's not going to be any more environmental regulations for the next 4 years. And if Obama gets in, then Katie bar the door. This is just going to be everything. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, but I think it's safe to say that had there been a Republican takeover of the White House and a solidification of Republican control of the legislative process, then there would have been less chance of having EPA regulations come out on not only water quality and stormwater, but air quality, hazardous materials, and a lot of other things, controlling emissions at power plants and energy production. And now that we have kind of a split, we've got a Democratic White House, Republican-controlled Congress, Senate, who knows, but kind of a coin toss on that one. But we're going to see probably the same kind of feuding and spats and floating of ideas and compromising and all that we've had for the past 4 years on these. So it's really tough to predict. Their deadlines for issuing draft in 2013 is like the 3rd version of that. The original draft is supposed to come out in, I think, 2010 or early 2011 for their new stormwater rulemaking. So who knows? I mean, I just, nobody can say. Nobody can say when it's coming out, if ever. Okay, I'm going to end on that. It's now 9:45. Time for, at least my clock says that. If we can be back here in 15 minutes, and we'll start a presentation by Carrie on the overview and changes of OKR. You will definitely want to see this one. Thank you.
Stood there boldly